Alright, let's take a look at question number 15. It reads, based on climate data that have been collected in Bar Harbor, Maine, the average monthly temperature in degrees Fahrenheit can be modeled by the equation B of x equals 23.914 sine 0.508 minus 2116 plus 55.300. The same governmental agency collected average monthly temperature data for Phoenix, Arizona, and found the temperature could be modeled by the equation P of x equals 20.238 sine 0.525x minus 2.148 plus 86.729. Question: which statement cannot be concluded based on the average monthly temperature models X months after starting data collection? Okay, so if you take a look at the options provided here, there are 4 keywords that you want to familiarize yourself with. I will give you a visual representation of these keywords, and then we'll apply it to the problem. Okay, so first thing you want to note is the variation of the temperature. This is just a fancy word for the range. What is the vertical span of the graph? That's what the temperature variation is, basically from the lows to the highs. Okay, so that's what that's asking for. And then we have midline, we have maximum, and we have minimum. Okay, so we're going to take a look at a sine function here because we're looking at sine. That's what we're provided with. And what on earth are these terms if you were given a sine function? So let's give ourselves a visual of what they are, and I'll also go over how to compute each component. We're going to start by looking at the midline. Okay, so midline is basically the vertical shift of the sine function. So midline is how high did you shift it. That's your h value. Okay, so for this particular problem, this is going to be our midline. Let me change the color there. So this is our midline. And the midline is basically your h value. Okay, so this is your h value, and that's your h value. So that's basically what the midline is. All right. Next thing to note is the maximum and the minimum. Okay, that one is pretty straightforward. The maximum is the high point, and the minimum is a low point. Okay, so let's go ahead and indicate that real quick. So say change this. This is your maximum right here. The peak, and the valley is your minimum, the low point. Okay, pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and label them. So this is your maximum right here, your max, and this is your min. Okay, now how do you get from your max to your min? Or how do you go? Well, the distance from the max to the min is your variation. Okay, but before we look at that, if you're going from the midline to the maximum or from the midline to the minimum, what you do is you add or subtract the amplitude from the midline. Okay, so if you're going from the midline to your maximum, what you're doing is you're taking the amplitude value and you're adding it to the midline. That takes you to your maximum. Okay, and then if you're looking for your minimum value, you're starting from your midline and you are subtracting the amplitude, so that will take you to your minimum. Okay, so what am I saying here? What I'm basically saying is that your maximum is going to be computed by finding the sum of the h value and your amplitude a. Okay, the amplitude value is basically what comes before your trig function, the coefficient of your trig function. So that's your maximum, and your minimum is basically h minus the amplitude. Okay. Okay. All right. The variation or the range is the vertical span of your graph. What's the length from the max to the min? That's your range or variation. Okay. How do you compute that? Is pretty straightforward. Your variation or range is simply your max minus your min. You just subtract your min from your max and you get your range. All right. So these are the four different things we're going to be finding for these two functions, and then we'll see which one is accurate. Okay. Those ones will be eliminated. The one that's inaccurate will be the correct answer because we're looking for which statement cannot be concluded. So which of these is false based on our determination of the components of these two models. Okay, so I have two graphical representations of the two functions here, just to give you a visual understanding of what we're talking about, and then we're gonna go ahead and compute them individually. Okay. All right. Let's start with the first model, the one from main, the bar harbor function. So that one is b of x equals 23.914 sine 0.508 x minus 2.116 plus 55.300. All right. So for this one, we're looking at the a value, which is the amplitude, and we're also looking at the h value. Okay, those are our main players here. So for b of x, the amplitude is basically the absolute value of the coefficient of the sine function, which is 23.914. The h value is what you're adding on to the sine component, which is 55.300. Alright, so now we have all the tools that we need to compute the max min, midline, and variation. Let's start with the maximum. The maximum is basically h, 55.300, plus your midline. So your h plus your amplitude. Your amplitude is 23.914. If you compute the sum, you're going to get 79.214. And then the midline is basically your h value, which is 55.3. These are all y values, by the way. Okay. And then your minimum is the midline, 55.3 minus 20 minus the amplitude minus 23.914, which comes out to 31.386. And then your variation or range, same thing. Your variation is basically your max minus your min. Okay, so your max is 79.214 minus your min, which is 31.386. You have a range of 47.828. Alright, so what on earth do all these values mean graphically? So let's take a look at the graph. So this one, the first one is our b of x function. Okay, so this is what we have just found. The high point of this graph is your maximum. The peak, if you trace it to your y-axis right there, that's your high point. This is your midline, and this is your minimum. And then the span from the top to the bottom is your variation or range. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in the values so you can see what I'm talking about. This is a max, and the max is 79.214. The midline is 55.3, and the minimum is 31.386. So all we're doing is adding and subtracting the amplitude, okay? And then the span from here to here is your variation. You just subtract that. All right, now let's take a look at the second function, p of x from Phoenix, Arizona. Same process. Let's write down the function first. So partition my workspace so we don't get things mixed up. P of x coming up. So P of x is 20.238 sine 0.525x minus 2.148 plus, ran out of space here, plus 86.729. So 86.729. Okay, so there you go. Now let's go ahead and find the relevant components. Start with the amplitude. The amplitude here is 20.238. Absolute value of the coefficient of the sine function. Okay, so that's 20.238. Our h value, the vertical shift, is your h, which is 86.729. All right, let's start with the maximum. The maximum is your midline plus your amplitude, 0.238. If you add those up, you end up with 106.967. Your midline is your h value, which is just 86.729. As indicated earlier, these are all y values. Your minimum is your midline, 86.729 minus your amplitude, which gives us an output of 66.491. And then lastly is the variation, also known as your range. For the Phoenix function, the variation is the difference between the maximum and the minimum. Okay? And then in that case, we're gonna, if you subtract the two, you get 40.476. Alright, now we have all the information that we need. Let's go ahead and answer the question. Alright, so first one, it says the variation of b of x is more than p of x. So let's look at the variation of b of x. 47, variation of p of x is 40. So that statement is true. As you can see, 47 is bigger than 40. So first statement is true. Next one, midline of b of x is lower than midline of p of x. Let's see, midline of b of x is 55, midline of p of x is 86. That is true also. Next one, maximum of b of x is 79 degrees Fahrenheit when you round it up. Let's see, maximum is 79 when you round it up. That is correct. So the answer should be option 4, or else something is wrong somewhere. So it says minimum of p of x is 20 degrees Fahrenheit when you round it up. Minimum of p of x, oh no, it's 66 when you round it up. So the one that's not correct is option 4. So that is the answer for question number 15. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. Really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your preparation for the upcoming Regents exam, do give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable to us. If you have any questions or comments about what we just covered in this presentation, just place it in the comment section below, and we'll be more than glad to support you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to other tutorials such as this. More clips can be found on mathgotserved.com. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.